I would love if we could give one of those talks that starts with a definition. It would be great. We could put the word uncomfortable in 500-point font Helvetica on the screen and then spin into a nice anecdote or interpretive dance that would challenge your assumptions about the world and make you want to go adopt a three-legged kitten.
We would love to start with a definition, but unfortunately, Webster's doesn't really know what it feels like to have your sister accidentally cut off all of your hair.
To always be standing here when this happens.
Or to lose your Speedo while swimming in front of your mother.
So, while Webster's may not totally get the pit in the stomach, how did that just happen? Maybe if I move to Australia now, no one will see me moments. There may be something more to the feeling of discomfort we've all experienced.
What if that same universal pit in the stomach feeling could do more than remind us that we should really stop agreeing to third wheel it to the movies? What if it could help to broaden our sense of empathy? What if it could help us to fight injustice and maybe even fuel social movements?
Garrett and I started talking about discomfort when we happened to jump into the same car together to drive to the People's Climate March in New York City.
As it turns out, spending 13 hours in a car with someone will compel you to talk. A lot.
At the time, I was navigating my transfer from Tulane University in New Orleans to a school that doesn't have a giant menorah in the middle of campus or apparently Mardi Gras break.
I was adapting to university life after spending the summer organizing in St. Louis, where I was, for the first time, living and working in communities charged with racial tension.
While at the march, the topic of discomfort defined every conversation.
We confronted the whiteness of the climate movement, the strange dynamic of excited selfie-taking tourists at the 9/11 memorial, and also the discomfort of using fossil fuels to drive to a climate march.
And at the end of the trip, we began to wonder why we were wrestling with this tension and what good could possibly come from it.
So what is discomfort? If you'll now turn to the person sitting next to you. No, literally do this. Look them in the eye.
And we'll tell you when to stop.
Now, if you thought that was a little uncomfortable, imagine doing that for 736 hours and 30 minutes. In 2010, at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, Marina Abramovic did just that.
On March 14th, she began a 17-day art exhibit where she would do nothing more than sit in a wooden chair in a white room, calmly staring ahead. In doing so, she would sit across from Lady Gaga, hold hands with her former German lover, and move dozens of people to tears.
Regardless of her artistic acclaim, there is something profound about her exploration into the human condition. Entering into an uncomfortable and vulnerable space, a space where layers of insecurity can be pulled away, seems to have the potential to broaden our understanding of humanity. Therefore, this small act of discomfort has the potential to be an exercise in empathy.
To us, discomfort is not trying one new thing every day that scares you, though we're really happy for you if you feel compelled to try the new salad dressing you've been eyeing across the dining hall. What we are talking about is not a personal development plan. It probably won't make you richer, more popular, more competitive on the job market.
So if intentional discomfort has the potential to be so powerful, why don't we seek it?
We don't do this naturally for many reasons. Risk, personal sacrifice, embarrassment, really, it doesn't earn you anything. So why should we go out of our way to find it?
In his 1940 essay on Baudelaire, Walter Benjamin begins his description of industrial society by stating, "Comfort isolates." The power of discomfort in our lives is that it moves us from the individual to the collective. It removes the illusion that our lives are separated from the rest of the world. So if comfort isolates, then discomfort can unite. As our circles of interconnectedness have grown, so too have our circles of moral responsibility. We live in a world where avoiding any involvement in social injustice is nearly impossible, if not illegal. From the food on our plates, to the fuel in our cars, to the corporations we work for, we are all implicated in an invisible machine that contributes to suffering worldwide.
In a recent trip I took to the US-Mexico border, I was drowned in a moment of personal silence as I watched an Operation Streamline proceeding. There I saw 70 male and female migrants chained by their hands and feet be funneled rapid fire through the legal system. I watched a woman walk by wearing a teal tracksuit that looked like something my mom might wear. I watched as a man stepped in front of the viewing area, turned to a woman sitting there, and said to her, "Te amo.
I love you.
Eres el amor de mi vida.
You are the love of my life.
Búscame en México.
Look for me in Mexico.
Te amo."
I love you.
I watched this and thought to myself, if we talked about politics in the same way that we experience pit in the stomach human connections, the dialogue could never look the same.
So what do we do with this now? We know that it can be difficult to implement life changes.
So like any good TED Talk, we thought long and hard about how to fit our next steps into a neat little acronym you can think about the next time you're considering an ethical overhaul.
Basically, you ought to consider those areas of others' lives that seem unfamiliar and reach out to their origins through intentional personal discomfort, which will probably feel terrible for a while, but will likely yield huge moral gains and potentially even fuel social movements in the long run. Really sure.
The practice of exercising discomfort is far from simple. It can hardly be reduced to a TED Talk, much less an acronym. It is, above all, individually demanding. In fact, seeking it is hard. It runs against the grain of our human nature. Comfort means safety, abundance. It's easy.
Embracing the uncomfortable is not easy, and we'll be the first to admit that. After Brittany and I started talking about the idea of discomfort, I have now been able to pinpoint areas in my life where I relentlessly grip onto the idea of comfort. And embracing discomfort hits home for me. No matter how many years have passed since I've been open about my sexuality, I have never been able to muster up the courage to tell my grandparents that I'm gay, even though it plagues my mind every time I visit them. It's easier that way. I don't have to do anything about it. Embracing the uncomfortable means having a conversation, frankly, I don't want to relive, so I still avoid this discomfort. But what if I didn't? What if we all didn't? How are we to change ideas plaguing the LGBTQ community, or issues such as racism, sexism, income inequality, or climate change for that matter, if we can't even engage in conversation about it? Embracing discomfort could lead to change, but shying from the uncomfortable will never lead to change.
Discomfort can be powerful if embraced. It can move groups of people, communities, and even nations to change, to move from the passive to the active, and to expand our circles of moral responsibility.
History is littered with examples of people who, moved by their discomfort, sought to change the status quo. We saw this in the university campaigns to divest from South African apartheid. We saw this in the civil rights movement, in labor, anti-war, and nuclear disarmament movements of the past. We even see it today in the hundreds of active fossil fuel divestment campaigns across the nation and across the world.
It is only in retrospect that we can see discomfort led us to the People's Climate March in the first place.
We felt uncomfortable about the fact that the poor and marginalized are disproportionately harmed by climate change, an issue they didn't create and one they have no voice in solving.
So what if we all got uncomfortable, broadened our spheres of moral responsibility, and seized our own responsibility for injustice? We think it would change everything.
We know that art can be a powerful means of expression, so we'd like to finish with a poem that we crafted that helps to reflect some of our experiences with discomfort. You're sitting in a chair.
You're sitting in a chair.
Toes curled on your grandparents' hardwood floor.
Heels on the courtroom floor.
Nervous.
Anxious.
You always are.
You've been told what to expect. You
Even
have
though
no
you know
idea what's coming.
It never really leaves your mind as much as you critique the ritual of playing cards your grandparents adore order.
You will too someday.
But it keeps conversation underground, permanently hibernating like a boot suffocating a seedling. Even the ants in this white noise house seek comfort.
Count it 1, 2, 3. Rounds of people shuffled through the legal induction into the criminal system.
Welcome.
Your choices are a felony or a misdemeanor and subsequent deportation. Happy Friday. Everything in me pulls toward the door, but I am glued here.
I still avoid the discomfort. I can still feel the razor-thin breasts from the last time, pacing in front of my mother's door, bone curling, blood crawling. Wasn't that all just a dream?
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Bum, bum, bum.
Because I just saw an attorney pull out his iPad to buy a flat screen on Amazon while a fully grown man broke into tears 4 feet away. And I wanted to break open his mind about the only topics of conversation I remember, like politics, money, and if he stays up at night giving a damn about other people he hasn't met, which feels like the closest thing to religion when you're sitting in a courtroom.
The little voice in my head keeps telling me, you could just wait to tell them.
And I want to catch him as he's walking away.
Wait.
And ask, are we watching the same scene?
Wait.
And I want him to stay.
Wait.
And listen to all the ways I can't be and refuse to be
Wait.
comfortable in this space.
Wait.
Especially when it's more like suffocating under immobility.
Wait.
And I want to tell him and I want him to wait. As I step back on the bus.
Where comfort will ask nothing of me.
As I sit here at the border.
In nature, the most diverse and productive regions of ecosystems are at the edges, at the margins.
Where the ocean meets the shoreline.
Not where the cliff rises out of the waters.
But where the whispers of the sea refuse to stop kissing the sand.
And I find myself somewhere in the middle.
We live in a world that thinks the depth of grief
Over a black body,
for 3 Muslim students
or anything reduced to a number and plastered in a newspaper washout.
can be measured in a breath before being buried under the next headline.
But if it lands,
And when it lands,
I want it to shatter and not pick up the pieces.
left in the remnants of the patriarchy
Instead of putting more stock in the battles of the world,
that can't be won in the courtroom
or at the border,
or in a hashtag,
or even a poem.
but instead begins
When I open my mouth,
when I can't sit still any longer
when I can't be anything but uncomfortable.
and the world starts
To move.